January 1st, 2026 changed everything. Rolex raised retail prices again. Third time in 12 months, steel Submariner jumped $550 overnight. Daytona increased $700. GMT-Master II climbed $700. Retail up. Rolex on top, but for some buyers, this is hell. Their watches aren't going up, they are crashing speedily into the floor. These owners are confused and don't know what is going on. If you bought Rolex at the gray market at premiums, or plan to invest in steel sports models, this video will explain exactly why your strategy just failed. And if you're thinking about buying in 2026, we'll show you what you should do among other things. The January 2026 price increase nobody asked for. January 1st, 2026. While most people were nursing hangovers, Rolex was raising prices. Third increase in 12 months. After bumping prices 5% in January 2025, then another 4% in May 2025, following US tariff announcements, Rolex decided buyers needed one more hit to start the new year, then slapped an average increase of 7% across the entire catalog. Let's break down what that actually means for specific models you know. For steel sports models, it was a 5.6% average increase. For gold models, it was an 8.7% average increase. These aren't modest adjustments. These are aggressive price pushes during a market that's actively contracting. Rolex justified these increases by citing rising gold prices and the 15% US tariff on Swiss goods. Fair enough? Except they raised prices in countries without tariffs too, and steel prices haven't surged. So what's really happening here? The breaking point. When pricing stops making sense. Here's the uncomfortable reality luxury brands don't want discussed. There's a psychological price threshold where buyers stop stretching and start questioning. For steel Rolex sports watches, that threshold is arriving in 2026. The Australian market reveals the problem. DMarge's analysis of Australian pricing shows the phenomenon clearly. When the current Submariner launched in 2020, it retailed for $13,150 Australian dollars. As of January 2026, $17,600 Australian dollars. That's $4,450 Australian dollars more, a 33.8% increase over 6 years. Adjusted for inflation, 15 to 25%, depending on methodology. Rolex has outpaced general price increases by roughly 10 to 15 percentage points. They're not just keeping up with inflation, they're aggressively pushing beyond it. The steel Daytona tells an even more aggressive story. In Australia, it's now approaching 30,000 Australian dollars. At that price point, the emotional equation changes completely. DMarge, an Australian lifestyle magazine, notes, buyers are no longer stretching. They are pausing. At that price, collectors start cross-shopping perpetual calendars, precious metal dress watches, and high complications from rivals. Steel Rolex stops being the default choice and becomes a topic of debate. That's the shift. Rolex isn't losing because their watches got worse. They're losing because alternatives suddenly make more sense. The US market shows the same pattern. US pricing tells the identical story with slightly different numbers. The no-date Submariner launched at $8,100 in 2020. In January 2026, it's $10,050. That's $1,950 more, a 24% increase. US cumulative inflation from 2020 to 2025 is approximately 15 to 25%, depending on the calculation method. Rolex is at the upper end, or exceeding inflation. But here's what matters more than percentages: psychological price thresholds. $8,100 felt expensive but achievable. Save for 6 to 12 months, buy the watch, own an icon. $10,050 crosses 5 figures. It enters territory where serious financial consideration becomes necessary. For many buyers, $10,000 triggers mental accounting shifts. It's no longer an expensive watch category. It's a major purchase requiring family discussion category. And once buyers start having family discussions about watch purchases, alternative suggestions emerge. Buyers are looking towards brands like Omega 6000, $400, and put the other $3,650 toward the kitchen renovation? Rolex's pricing strategy assumes watch collectors make autonomous decisions. Above $10,000, that assumption breaks down for many buyers. The comparison problem gets worse at current pricing. At $16,900 for a steel Daytona, you're in the price range where serious alternatives exist. You could get an Omega Speedmaster Professional and an Omega Seamaster 300M and still have cash to spare. And it's not just limited to Omega 2. You could buy a Grand Seiko Spring Drive GMT and a Grand Seiko Mechanical Diver and still have money to spare too. The Rolex pricing is definitely broken. Then, wait till you find out that you can get the Zenith Chronomaster Sport with superior El Primero movement and still have a lot of money to spare. You could even get the Tudor Black Bay 58 and a Cartier Santos Medium and still have so much cash. Has Rolex overdone it? Because the forum evidence shows buyer hesitation. Watch forums and Reddit threads from late 2025 through early 2026 is showing a shift. Buyers are actively thinking about luxury and also value for money. They are thinking of getting multiple luxurious watches from other brands. One person posted, "Was set on buying a sub. Then I did the math. $10K gets me the Omega Seamaster I want, plus the Tudor Black Bay 58. I want plus $1,000 left over. Can't justify one Rolex over two great watches." Another wrote, "Waited 18 months for Daytona allocation. When it finally came through at $16,900, I realized I didn't want to spend that much anymore. Bought a Zenith Chronomaster for $9,500 instead. Zero regrets." This sentiment appears hundreds of times across collector communities, not thousands. Rolex still has massive demand, but hundreds of examples of buyers walking away represents a trend Rolex can't afford to ignore. Rolex can raise retail prices all they want, but if buyers cross-shop and choose alternatives, retail becomes irrelevant. And that's exactly what's happening in 2026. Also, while Rolex pushes retail higher, the secondary market is screaming the opposite message. Buyers aren't willing to pay these prices. The secondary market tells the real story. Watch charts. January 2026 data reveals what's going on with the secondary market. We're now at a point where increasing numbers of Rolex watches trade below retail on the secondary market. Models trading at or below retail include many two-tone date-just configurations, which trade 10 to 15% below retail. Precious metal day dates go 5 to 10% below retail depending on the dial. Sky dwellers in gold have various discounts too. Even steel sports models, the supposed unicorns, show concerning stats. Yes, some still command premiums, but those premiums have collapsed from the 2021-2022 peaks. Speaking of peaks, in March 2022, secondary market prices hit $53,900 for white dial Panda Daytonas. That's 3.5 times the retail price of roughly $15,000 at the time. Early 2026 reality. The same watch that trades for $32,000 to $35,000. Still above the new $16,900 retail. Yes, but down 40% from peak. Now, during that same period, retail increased $1,900 and secondary fell $18,900 to $21,900. What this actually means is that, let's say you bought a Daytona on the gray market in early 2022 for $50,000. You now own a watch worth $32,000 to $35,000. You lost $15,000 to $18,000 in value. If you waited and bought at authorized dealer retail whenever your allocation came through, you paid $16,900 and own a watch worth $32,000 to $35,000. You're up $15,100 to $18,100. The people who overpaid got crushed. The people who waited and paid retail did fine. The lesson? Don't pay gray market premiums during hype cycles. Still, even with these price drops, a new generation of buyers is saying no thanks to Rolex entirely. Gen Z's Great Rejection, the Cartier phenomenon. Something remarkable happened in the watch market between 2018 and 2025. An entire generation decided they didn't want what their parents wanted. The numbers don't lie. Chrono 24 and Fratello's secondary watch market report, H1 2025, documented a seismic shift. Gen Z's watch-buying behavior is single-handedly reversing trends that dominated for 2 decades. Cartier's market share among Gen Z buyers was 1.7% in 2018, and now it's 6.8% in 2025. That's 4 times growth in 7 years. Meanwhile, steel sports watch dominance, the Rolex Submariner, GMT-Master II, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak aesthetic, is declining among younger buyers. So what's happening? Why does Gen Z reject steel sports icons? Interviews with Gen Z collectors and market data reveal consistent themes. Everyone's dad has a Submariner. It's not special anymore. I want something that shows I actually know watches, not just that I have money. Steel sports watches are too obvious, too try-hard. Quiet luxury means something unexpected. Gen Z's preference is clear. Slimmer, design-led, dressier watches. Pieces that signal sophistication through restraint rather than sport tool watch ruggedness. Cartier fits perfectly. The Tank, the Santos, Panther for women. These are watches with century-long design histories, immediately recognizable silhouettes, and elegant proportions under 40 millimeters. They're the opposite of 42 millimeters Royal Oaks and 40 millimeters Submariners, and Gen Z loves them precisely because they're different. However, there is also a shift going on. I call it the dress watch renaissance effect. Watch Chart's mid-2025 analysis confirmed this isn't just Cartier, it's an entire category shift. Rolex's dress collections outperformed sports in 2025. The Date had a 7.1% secondary market appreciation. The Cellini did a plus 6.1%. The Datejust did a 5.2%. Meanwhile, some steel sports models saw flat or negative performance. The 36mm sizing trend validates this further. For over a decade, bigger was better, 42mm plus. Wrist presence, statement pieces. Now, 36 to 39mm is the sweet spot. Tudor Black Bay 58-39mm outsells larger Black Bay models. Rolex's 36mm Explorer and Datejust configurations gain traction. Grand Seiko's bestsellers are 37 to 39mm dress models. Gen Z's driving this. They want watches that fit under shirt cuffs, watches that work in professional settings, watches that signal refined taste rather than aggressive wealth display. Cartier's surge isn't just about one brand winning. It's about an entire category. Dress watches, slimmer profiles, design-led pieces, displacing what Rolex built its modern empire on. And Rolex has a partial answer to this, but will it be enough? The independent watchmaker surge. While Rolex raises prices and loses Gen Z, another category is quietly eating market share. Independent watchmakers producing fewer than 1,000 pieces annually. The FP, Journe, or the anti-Rolex as people now call it. FP, Journe, exemplifies everything Rolex isn't. Annual production is 900 watches versus Rolex's 1.2 million. Movement finishing visible through display casebacks versus Rolex's closed cases. Horological innovation prioritized over brand recognition. Appreciation among serious collectors rather than mass appeal. In 2025, F.P. Journe did a madness, at least according to the data from luxury watch market analysts. F.P. Journe overall price increase was plus 22%. Turnover rate at top price tiers was 49%. Secondary market liquidity is strong despite niche status. The turnover rate reveals the key insight. F.P. Journe watches sell quickly on secondary markets because buyers who want them exist in sufficient numbers relative to limited production. Compare that to Rolex's producing 1.2 million watches annually for a market increasingly fragmented across brands. Then there are the other independent risers Rolex has to deal with. I am talking about the likes of H, Moser, and C. These aren't household names, and that's precisely their appeal. Luxury positioning for informed buyers now means knowing brands your colleagues don't, owning an MB&F Legacy Machine or H. Moser Endeavor signals watch knowledge. Owning a Submariner signals you stood in line and got lucky with allocation. The status signaling shifted. For Gen Z and informed collectors, Rolex became entry-level. Independence became aspirational. Rolex's 32.1% market share, Morgan Stanley 2024, remains dominant by volume. But mindshare among tastemakers? Declining. The rise of independence reveals an uncomfortable truth. Rolex's production strategy that drove dominance is now a liability. When everyone can own a Rolex, it stops being special. So what should Rolex do? Especially when buyers are doing this next part. The opting out phenomenon. Buyers just leaving. Perhaps the most remarkable shift in 2026. Buyers choosing not to buy watches at all, rather than accept current market conditions. Watch forums, Reddit threads, collector groups, the sentiment is remarkably consistent. I was saving for a Submariner. At $10,050, I'm putting the money toward a down payment instead. Priorities shifted. Had allocation for a Daytona. Decided I'd rather own 3 different brands than one overpriced Rolex. This isn't just a few disgruntled buyers. This is systematic buyer fatigue. And Rolex's waitlist isn't helping out too. Here's what Rolex created through artificial scarcity and rising prices. Authorized dealers still maintain waitlists for steel sports models, 18 to 36 months for Daytonas, 12 to 24 months for GMT-Master II, Pepsi, Batman, 6 to 18 months for Submariners. During the 2020-2022 hype cycle, buyers accepted this. Waitlists felt like validation of desirability. Being on the list meant you might get the privilege of buying something valuable. In 2026 reality, buyers are dropping off waitlists. Why wait 24 months to pay $16,900 for a Daytona when you can buy an alternative watch or invest the money somewhere else? The gray market collapse signals this. Gray market dealers report 20 to 30% transaction volume declines from 2023 to 2025. This isn't because buyers prefer authorized dealers. It's because buyers prefer not buying at all. When gray markets offered instant gratification with premiums, buyers paid them. When premiums collapsed, but retail kept climbing, buyers stepped back entirely. Looks like the whole luxury watch industry has some hard thinking to do. Because they've always assumed demand was infinite, that buyers would pay whatever they charged, but that is no longer the case. But they can still enjoy their victory while it lasts, just like Omega is. Omega's quiet victory. While everyone focused on Rolex's troubles and Cartier's surge, Omega executed the perfect strategy. Stay consistent. Avoid hype. Serve the community. Hodinkey's 2025 year-end analysis noted, brands like Omega, which avoided hype spikes, continue to gain steadily, buoyed by a growing community of informed enthusiasts. Watch charts mid-2025 data showed Omega's secondary market growth outpacing retail sales growth, meaning more buyers choosing pre-owned Omega than new, indicating strong sustained demand and value retention. Omega's market share is holding steady around 7.5 to 8%, second only to Rolex in secondary market transaction value. So, what's working for Omega right now? Omega offers everything buyers want. You can walk into an authorized dealer and walk out with a Seamaster. No waitlists, no allocation games. The technology on it is also insane. It has the coaxial escapement, master chronometer certification, 15,000 Gauss magnetic resistance, objectively superior specifications to Rolex in many categories. Also, the price is relatively friendly. It delivers 90% of functionality of the Seamaster Diver, 300M for 60% of the price. It's got a cool heritage too. There's the moon landing. James Bond, Olympic timekeeping. Omega's history rivals Rolex's. The value proposition is overwhelming. Rolex charges around $10,050 for a Submariner no date with 300 meters water resistance and Rolex's standard movement. Omega charges about $6,000 $400 for a Seamaster 300M with 300 meters water resistance, coaxial escapement, and 15,000 Gauss magnetic resistance in a watch you can buy today. That $3,650 price difference buys an entire Tudor Black Bay 58, a Grand Seiko mechanical watch, a nice vacation, and 6 months of mortgage payments. Omega's growth comes from collectors who research, who understand escapements, who appreciate certification standards, who value horological innovation. These aren't impulse buyers chasing Instagram hype. These are people who decided Omega's master chronometer certification matters more than Rolex's brand recognition. And there are more of them every year. Omega Speedmaster sales in 2025. The Moonwatch family, professional, racing, dark side of the moon, accounted for over 50% of Omega's sales. That's one collection driving half the brand. Why? Because informed buyers know the Speedmaster is the only watch NASA qualified for spacewalks. They know the mechanical moonwatch movement caliber, 3861, is one of the most reliable chronographs ever made. That knowledge translates to purchases. And Rolex has no equivalent story for the Daytona that justifies the current price gap. Omega's winning because they're playing a different game. While Rolex chases artificial scarcity and price increases, Omega focuses on availability and value. Guess which strategy works when buyers get tired of waiting? Some buyers are pushed to the secondary market, but they have to be careful because that's where those models losing thousands of dollars are. You don't want to be like the secondary market traders I told you about earlier in this video, do you? The models actually losing $5,000 and more. If you are trading in the secondary market and you've bought any of these watches, RIP to your bank account. 1. Gold Sky Dweller. The $8,000, $12,000 collapse. The Rolex Sky Dweller, in gold configurations, represents one of the most dramatic value collapses in the current market. As of January 2026, the yellow gold on Oysterflex retails at $50,850. The yellow gold on gold bracelet is going for $61,000. Rose gold configurations have a similar pricing. On the secondary market reality, the yellow gold Oysterflex models go for $29,000 to $35,000. The rose gold Oysterflex goes for $30,000 to $38,000. The gold bracelet version costs $40,000 to $50,000. That's $15,850 to $21,850 below retail for Oysterflex models. If you bought at retail last year, you lost between $15,000 to $22,000 in value immediately. Monochrome watches noted that gold Sky Dweller models received only a 1% price increase in January 2026, the smallest increase in Rolex's entire catalog. Every other gold model got 6 to 8% increases. Why the anomaly? Industry watchers speculate Rolex is trying to move slow-selling inventory before potential discontinuation. When a brand barely raises prices on a slow seller while aggressively pushing prices on everything else, that's a signal. The Sky Dweller Gold on Oysterflex might be the most underappreciated Rolex, technically. Annual calendar, dual time zone, ring command bezel, but the market doesn't care about complications when the watch costs $51,000 and looks like a dress watch. Gold Submariners represent another massive depreciation category. White gold Submariner date retails for $52,100, up from $48,000. On the secondary market, it goes for $38,000 to $44,000. That's $8,100 to $14,100 below retail. And that's after Rolex increased the retail price $4,100. How about that? Rolex raised retail prices to $4,100. The secondary market ignored it completely. The gap between retail and reality widened by $4,100 overnight on January 1st, 2026. If you're a gray dealer who paid $48,000 wholesale last year for white gold Submariners, and now they're worth $38,000 to $44,000 on secondary, you're underwater at $4,000 to $10,000 per watch. And retail just became $4,100 more expensive, making your inventory even less competitive. Two-tone Rolex watches, Rolazor models combining steel with gold, are experiencing systematic depreciation across multiple collections. Two-tone Submariner date codes $18,900 in retail. At the secondary market, it costs $15,000 to $17,000. That puts the gap at between $1,900 to $3,900 below retail. Buyers want either pure steel sports watches or full precious metal dress watches. Two-tone occupies an awkward middle ground, too expensive to be entry-level, too casual to be true luxury. The result? Systematic underperformance. Factory diamond Rolex sports models represent perhaps the worst value retention in the entire catalog. These watches combine extremely high retail prices, limited buyer appeal as most collectors prefer clean dials and difficult resale, a microscopically small buyer pool. The result is a 20 to 35% reduction. Everest Bands notes, factory gem-set Rolexes have a dedicated but smaller market. You can typically buy these references below retail, a rarity in the Rolex world. That last phrase is key. Typically buy below retail. When Rolex's own factory diamond pieces trade below retail consistently, that's not a temporary correction. That's structural market rejection. These aren't isolated examples. These are systemic patterns revealing which Rolex watches the market actually rejects. And Rolex's response? Keep raising retail prices anyway. What the January 2026 increases really mean. Let's zoom out and examine what Rolex's pricing strategy reveals about their market position. 1. The revenue protection strategy. Rolex posted $10.5 billion revenue in 2024, up from $500 million from 2023. How did they achieve growth? Not through increased production. Production was flat or declined slightly around 1.17 to 1.2 million watches. They achieved growth through price increases. Same watches. Higher prices. More revenue. This works short-term. Long-term, it's dangerous. Because every price increase without corresponding demand increase pushes more buyers into alternatives. And once buyers discover Omega, Cartier, Grand Seiko, Tudor deliver comparable or superior value, they rarely come back to Rolex. 2. The tariff excuse breaks down. Rolex blamed May 2025 price increases on US tariffs, which briefly hit 39% before settling at 15%. Fair enough for US pricing. Except Rolex raised prices globally in January 2026, including markets without tariff increases. Australia, no new tariffs. Prices increased 5 to 7%. Europe, no new tariffs. Prices increased 5 to 7%. UK, no new tariffs. Prices increased. If tariffs were the real reason, why raise prices everywhere? The answer, because they can, until they can't. 3. Gold prices justify gold watches, not steel. Gold hit record highs in December 2025, breaking through $4,400 per ounce. That legitimately impacts gold watch production costs. Yellow gold day date increasing 9%? Defensible. Steel Submariner increasing 6%? Steel prices haven't surged proportionally. This is pure margin expansion. Rolex is testing how far they can push steel sports pricing while maintaining the luxury positioning narrative. The secondary market's message is clear. They've pushed too far. Every price increase Rolex implements is an experiment. They're testing buyer tolerance, and in 2026, buyers are finally saying enough. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly choosing alternatives. The future. 3 scenarios. Looking ahead through 2026 and beyond, 3 scenarios seem plausible. Scenario 1. Rolex holds the line. Rolex continues annual price increases, maintains current production levels, and keeps the allocation system intact. Result: revenue grows short-term through pricing power. Market share erodes long-term as Gen Z chooses Cartier. Informed buyers choose Omega, and price-sensitive buyers choose Tudor. Rolex remains dominant but becomes increasingly irrelevant to younger collectors. In 10 years, Rolex ownership signals, "My dad bought me this," rather than "I'm a watch collector." Scenario 2. Rolex corrects course. Rolex freezes prices for 2 to 3 years, increases steel sports production modestly, and simplifies the allocation system. The result would be that the secondary market stabilizes, buyer sentiment improves, and gray market premiums return slightly. But the probability that Rolex would do this is slim. Rolex has shown no willingness to admit current strategy has problems. The brand operates with Swiss banking-level secrecy and stubbornness. Scenario 3. Market fragmentation. Most likely. Luxury watch market fragments into distinct tiers. Ultra-luxury tiers would be Patek Philippe, A, Lange and Söhne, Vacheron Constantin. Aspirational luxury would be Rolex, Audemars Piguet. Informed collector tier would be Omega, Grand Seiko, Cartier, and Independence. The entry luxury tier would be Tudor, Longines, and Oris. Rolex's market share contracts from 32% to 25% to 28% over 5 years as buyers distribute across categories. Rolex remains profitable but loses cultural dominance. Gen Z becomes the Cartier generation, not the Rolex generation. And once that shift solidifies, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. The real question isn't whether Rolex will survive. They're too big to fail. The question is whether Rolex will remain culturally relevant to the next generation of buyers. The Smart Buyer's 2026 strategy. If you're considering buying luxury watches in 2026, here's the intelligent approach. Strategy 1. Wait on steel sports Rolexes. Secondary market prices are falling. Retail prices are rising. The gap is narrowing. At some point, possibly 2027, 2028, secondary may fall below retail for currently premium models. When that happens, the gray market becomes the smart buy. Until then, waiting costs nothing. Every month you delay, prices drop $100 to $300 in many cases. Strategy 2. Explore alternatives aggressively. Before committing to Rolex, force yourself to test alternatives I have mentioned over the course of this video. Spend real time with these alternatives, not 5 minutes at a dealer. Wear them for days using return policies. Assess whether Rolex's brand premium justifies the price gap. Many buyers discover it doesn't. And $4,000 to $10,000 saved buys a lot of value elsewhere. Strategy 3. Buy pre-owned from informed sellers. The secondary market offers superior value in 2026 across most categories. A 2020 Submariner with papers in excellent condition. Minimal premium for instant availability. Strategy 4. Consider independence for statement pieces. If your goal is watch that shows I know watches, independents deliver better than Rolex in 2026. F, P, Journe, H, Moser and C, Rexep Rexepi, MB and F. These require real knowledge to appreciate. Ownership signals expertise. Prices start around $20,000 to $30,000, comparable to gray market Daytonas. But the statement is completely different. Strategy 5. Track market data before buying. Use watch charts, Chrono 2-4 price tracking, Bob's Watches market reports. Understand whether your desired model is appreciating, stable, or declining. Buying a Rolex at peak pricing without checking secondary market trends is financial malpractice. The data is free. Use it. Rolex isn't collapsing. Their business remains phenomenally successful. But the relationship between Rolex's brand positioning and market reality is fracturing. They keep raising retail prices. Secondary markets keep falling. The gap between what Rolex says watches are worth and what buyers will actually pay keeps widening. January 2026's price increases accelerated this divergence. These increased prices invite comparison, and Rolex aren't win many comparisons at current pricing. Gen Z is choosing Cartier. Informed collectors are choosing Omega. Budget-conscious buyers are choosing Tudor. Price-insensitive collectors are choosing Independence. Everyone's choosing something, just not Rolex as reflexively as before. The watches themselves remain excellent. The manufacturing quality is superb. The heritage is real. But excellence doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a market with alternatives. And in 2026, those alternatives are increasingly compelling. Rolex built dominance on a simple formula: make great watches, control supply, charge premiums, let demand exceed availability. That formula is breaking. Not because the watches aren't great, because buyers learned they can get great watches elsewhere without the waitlists, allocation games, and price increases. Rolex's challenge isn't survival, it's relevance. Will the next generation want what their parents wanted? Or will they define luxury differently? 2026 suggests the latter, and Rolex has no answer yet. The collapse isn't in the watches, it's in the assumption that buyers will always come back. That assumption just died. Welcome to the post-Rolex dominance era, where excellence matters, but so does value, availability, and cultural relevance. Rolex has the first. They're rapidly losing the other three. What do you think would eventually happen to Rolex? Let me know in the comments, and also smash that like button and subscribe.